very first interview of the second season of the New Earth podcast. And we have with us Tom Rossi today. Hi, Tom.
Hi, everybody.
And I love that we started with a guest that was already an interview, a guest in the previous season. And so we're starting again, but with a different tone, with a different shade of his personality, his life, by looking at something different, which is more the ego death and the journey that he went through, and how music helped him in his journey, and how he's using music today to help people in their own journey, in their own ego death, and in their own healing, like trauma healing, and in their life journey in general. So, Tom, you are a musician and you have a lot of experience. I feel like the very first time that I met you, I still remember, I'm very visual, so I always remember, like, especially when I meet people the first time, I remember a lot of details. And so I remember we were at Gigi's house for an jam session, and I remember noticing Tom because we were like all kinds of different ages, but I could see that you had a higher level of consciousness. I could feel that you had gone through an ego death and that you were playing Tom role that day, and that this is something you actually said in the previous interview, which I suggest you guys to check out. And I really felt that you had this much higher level of consciousness than everybody else in the room, and you were sitting on the what's the name of that drum? The square, the square.
Cajon? Yeah, the box.
Yeah, you were sitting on the box drum, and I remember feeling your consciousness at that time. I was like, wow, because I feel like something that really makes the difference, like when you start having an ego death and we start really reaching a higher level of consciousness, is patience. I feel like the sense of time and the urge that you feel in your egoic modality kind of goes away, and you start being more patient. And I could tell that you were just like in a different time frame, in a different times and space kind of time frame in your mind, and you were just there like this old tree, that like was there sitting, and everybody was like these squirrels going around, which were a lot more, even if we're sitting, but like it was a different kind of feeling. So tell me something about how you started with when was your very first experience of ego death?
Well, I think it was really music that drew me out into the world. Particularly, I think the first big one was Africa, when I lived in Togo for 4 months, West Africa, West African country, right between Benin and near Nigeria and Benin, down on the Ivory Coast down there. And it really was like, as an American being, in our culture is pretty provincial, so going to Africa was like going back in time. It was like going to another planet. So there's a lot of ego death there, a lot of just opening up to a larger world, which, can feel, very small, can make me feel very small. So, and I can remember, I'm just recalling, actually, probably the very first time was when my family, when I was a kid, when my family drove to see our relatives in New York City. I used to hate it because the city was so big and so amazing that I felt that smallness. I felt like this little kid in the back seat of a car. But going to Africa was much more enchanting because the music led me there. So really, music has always been my vehicle of travel and of experience. And there I went to a lot of voodoo ceremonies. My girlfriend, Megan, at the time, was living in Vaughan, which is a heavy voodoo belt in Togo. And so I went, they call it Vodun, Voodoo is like a, you know, American term, but it's their sacred spiritual and religious practices using powerful music, mostly drumming, and I'll never forget being in our little walled-in area, and then the next neighborhood over, the next house over, was having a ceremony, and they'd start in the morning, and the drums would keep going, and there's bells and shakers and singing, and I'd be going to sleep that night, and the drums would still be going. And I'd wake up next morning, and the drums would still be going. So it'd be like a couple days of a ceremony, and I'd never experienced that before in our culture. So, and then when I actually did get to a ceremony, and was honored to be there, and was a special guest, and we were sat down right near the drummers, and it was amazing. Rock and roll concert in a stadium was never the same. I mean, they generated as much, if not more, energy with 4 drums and bells and singing and people going into trance. So it was a whole amazing, incredible, mystical experience that was unfolding right before my eyes. So I think that was the first big one.
There's so many cool things that you just said, like
Yeah.
many things that really need to be unfolded, I feel like, in your experience, because from one side there is like a lot what you said, that you associated the ego death with being small, feeling small.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was a little child, I didn't grow up in a very conscious type of environment, but I remember, and most likely that was like a remembrance of my previous life, or of something that I had achieved in my previous life. Probably I had a Kundalini awakening in my previous life as well. And so as a kid, like 5 years old, I remember I invented this meditation whose main purpose was to make me feel small. I really actively will try to envision myself from other people's eyes, to like pretend of being someone else, other people in their life, in their things, so that they will be having their own experience, and I was the side character that they were not thinking about. And I will intentionally force myself to feel that feeling of being unimportant, of being just something small and on the side, right? And from there, then I started also doing the same by going up and imagining myself as a tiny dot on planet Earth.
Yeah.
To remember how small I was as compared to the size of it.
Yes.
So I feel like a huge part of the ego death, and I love that you said that, because this is the first time that someone else says, like, associates feeling small with ego death, and I think this is a huge, a key component of it. Like, and probably that's why you also have this much higher level of consciousness as most people, because you started as a kid to do the same that I was doing as a kid, right? To do this practice of, not practice on purpose, you were brought to it by
it was what was
this feeling, but you were prone to that.
Happening.
Everybody
what was on the menu.
Yeah, but also everybody goes to New York, and like people don't have that feeling all the time, you know what I mean? So it's like you had that feeling, and you felt you had an ego death by going to New York. How many people go to New York?
And even when I was living there, I finally did move there in my 20s, and it was just the most amazing phenomenon to be so closely surrounded by so many people, but to also feel so alone at the same time. It's a very interesting phenomenon, and you could probably feel that in any city.
Was it a good feeling or a negative feeling, or what did
it was what it was. I think it was the truth that there's, you know, everybody comes to the city to make their dreams come true, and that you feel that energy. Everyone's very focused, very creative, very inspired, very busy, you know. So on these moments when I wasn't quite connected yet, and I wanted something from the city, I wanted to connect, I wanted to find some work or whatever, there were those moments of feeling that smallness again, you know. And also
one of many.
And as you were talking, I'm kind of bouncing around timeline wise as my memories come back to me, but a real big one was when I was a freshman in college. I went to the University of Puget Sound, and me and some buddies, we bought motorcycles, and we went out and picked mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, because somebody knew how to pick them. And
wow, you picked the wild ones.
In Tacoma, they grew wild in these fields on the side of the highway. So we did that, and not knowing what the fuck we were doing, I picked a baggie of like this much, and I ate about half of it. All at
like
once.
Raw?
Yeah, raw.
Wow.
And
what
and I that was my actual real like psychedelic ego death, like that. It was going great for the first like half hour, and then I saw the sweeping patterns, and my friend's face was kind of doing the kaleidoscope thing, and then I didn't feel so good, and I went back to my dorm room by myself, and I closed the door, and I just started melting in my bed, and I wasn't sure if I had died, and I was on my deathbed. I felt a real death. I felt like even part of my body had dissolved, and all that was left was like my big toe, and so there was some physical feelings, and I kept hearing a knock on the door from the RA, right, who was coming around. She's like, "Tom, are you all right, Tom?" And it was so this weird Pink Floyd moment of this like far off knocking, and this voice, and me in my room, and it was sort of this green fuzzy energy around me, and I was just completely dissolving in my bed. And then I just slowly, gradually came to, and I had this old Benny Goodman album called "Swing Into Spring." Highly recommend if you can find it.
Okay.
Even. And I put it on, and it's just this beautiful, happy clarinet, big band music. I just sort of came back into the world, but that was a huge one. And then during that time, like that 2 years when I was at Puget Sound, I had another LSD trip with friends on Mount Rainier. We went hiking, and that was not that great, but it was another similar experience of like, what am I? Who are you? Like,
challenging your perceptions.
Yeah, like getting lost in the universe, and feeling super small, and actually feeling a little depressed about it. Especially after the LSD experience. So that was the college years, and then Africa came after. So that was more being out in the world and being drawn into it by the music, and then coming back in and skipping through the timeline and all this stuff. I think a lot of ego death too is embracing a culture like that. Like for me, the African drum was not something I was just gonna fuck around on. That had an ancient alphabet and an ancient code, and I wanted to learn it, so I really studied.
So did you go? Because this is like, I think this is huge. Like traveling for Americans, guys, it's huge, because this country is really made for people to keep staying here, right? Like the salaries and everything are kept in a way so that the only thing you can do is provide for your basic needs, and you can't go out, because if you go out, then you realize, well, I'm actually not at the center of the world, right? Americans are not everything that exists in the world. So Americans, unfortunately, are really intentionally ego-fed, so that they believe that this is it, that they're superior to everybody else, but this is how you get exploited. This is the beginning of any narcissistic abuse story, is the love bombing and ego feeding, because that's what really allows you to become the host for the parasite, to become ready to be exploited. That's how it starts. And so that's why Americans are so ego-fed all the time, because it's a way of exploiting them better, making them believe that exploitation of them and their families is actually what makes them special. That's what gives them Stockholm syndrome as well. So this is all part of like a narcissistic abuse of people here. And so because of that, people who go, it worked very well, unfortunately. And And so this is really how it is. And so people tend to not go out. And even when they go out, and this is the trick, this is the best trick. Even when they go out, they believe of being better, and so they don't actually learn anything. Because if you have this perspective of being better,
that's like the classic gross American tourist.
Yeah, but this is how you keep people in their cage, by making them believe that they're not in a cage, they're just better than everybody else. And so when they go and compare themselves to a free human, they're like, these are stupid people, I'm better.
Well, yeah,
right?
I mean, that's what Africa did for me.
Yeah.
And I'm always forever grateful that it taught me a different way to be, a different way to think. Being with this ancient human culture, this beautiful culture, in so many ways, you know, not just the music, but just the way they are with each other, the family strength, the community strength, the traditions, the food, the way they treat each other is powerful. It taught me to be like very laid back in certain ways, like
coming from New York especially.
Yeah, and also from a waspy sort of uptight kind of culture, to be just like more relaxed and communal, and was a big one. And I think after that I had this code that I wouldn't do vacations, you know, like this American tourist thing. I was like not into that at all. That wasn't me anymore. I specifically was like, in fact, my parents brought me to Cancun, you know, a bit around after I got back from Africa and all that stuff. I was like, I don't do that. So I'm gonna go, and I hitchhiked down to Playa del Carmen, which at the time wasn't developed at all. So it was just a beach town off the highway. So they were in Cancun, and I was, you know, spent a bunch of days down. And
for those who don't know, Cancun is really the epitome of tourism. It's basically Vegas on the beach.
Yeah.
This is really what it is. So it's like really going from Cancun to Playa del Carmen, which is nearby, but is also like very wild. I mean, now it's not that wild anymore, but like at that time,
it's probably more developed now.
Yeah,
but this was in the 90s.
Yeah. So you went basically from Vegas on the beach to wild.
I went down. I hitchhiked down there. I didn't have a hotel or anything. I slept on a park bench with a bunch of migrant workers, and we smoked a joint. They got me high, and we just hung out. I was one of the people, and that was kind of a thing for me. Everywhere I'd go, I went to Cuba. Then after I went to Brazil, and I would stay with families that either I had their name from somebody who'd been there already, or I just went and figured it out. That was also part of that sort of ego death of just throwing myself somewhere that I'd never been and figuring it out.
You were basically a pioneer couch surfer. Like he invented couch surfing without knowing. I mean, I feel like at that time, like there were a lot of people who were more like hitchhiking and being more prone.
Oh, I ran into so many great people.
Yeah.
I'll never forget these two German fellas. They were from Bavaria, Nick and Dimitri, and they were like these Rasta Germans.
Rasta Germans.
Yeah, they had a merchant business where they'd go to Brazil and get all this textile stuff, trinket stuff, but they were funny, and they had some great jokes, and just you meet great people, you know.
If you're open, you meet great people, especially if you travel solo. I love traveling solo as well.
Yeah.
I did kind of like something like I went to Costa Rica by myself. Like I did a bunch of like solo travels that I loved for the same reason, because if you put yourself, if you're alone in a club or in a beach or anywhere, people come talk to you. It's just different, because first of all, you feel like you're free to do whatever you like. So if you want to talk to people, to meet new people, you just do that. And instead, if you have friends, you're always in your bubble. You don't have the need to interact with your surroundings, nor you are curious, nor people come close to you because they feel like they will be interrupting something, right? And so when you travel solo, that's how you meet the best people. Like,
you have to be out of your comfort zone. You have to be interactive. You have to surf that vulnerability power spot. You can't be defensive. in a way. You of course want to protect yourself and be wise and observant, and gravitate towards the right people. But I think when you're aligned in yourself, you'll do that naturally.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the idea of the alignment, and I feel like the ego death also has a lot to do with realigning. In the previous episode, I talked about how finding your truth really has to do with recalibrating. Like finding the truth and finding getting rid of your ego, which is the lie, the deceptive layers that we put on top of the truth, right? So once you recalibrate, then everything becomes more clear, and it's easy also to recognize people that are in their truth and that are trying to just be authentic and transparent with you, and people that are trying to trick you or that are trying to hurt you. So it's way easier because then you calibrate and you can recognize people from their eyes, from their tone of voice. Like I realized I recently had a temazcal, and I read people from their eyes. Like I have my psychic abilities are very much tuned on the eyes, but then in the darkness of the temazcal, it's like a sweat lodge in which people chant and drum, and it was all women temazcal, in which there were shamans drumming and we were chanting, and it's all dark. It's a sweat lodge. It's only the dark. There's these like hot stones that create the heat. And I realized that I don't actually need to look at people. Like now that I'm so calibrated, I know everything about people in the dark from their tone of voice.
You're
I just
feeling
know
on
everything.
a deeper level, more sensitive level.
Yes, exactly. I don't even need to look at them anymore, and it's beautiful. So
I think that's what happens, right? When you don't have the same creature comforts or the same conveniences, you start to expand your senses in order to harmonize with the environment, and also having a clear mission too, a clear purpose. Mine was music, and also as a musician you have a special pass, especially when I was in Brazil.
Yeah, of course. Are you kidding me? People are like, do you play?
Well,
come in.
Because if you're not a musician, then you're just a tourist. And like in Brazil, I was in Pelourinho, which is a pretty intense ghetto area. It's probably built up now, but in the 90s it was pretty intense. And I went there that's where Olodum, the big samba reggae group, was practicing in the square every weekend, and it was amazing. But I would walk through a throng of people to go from, like, say, the bar to the center of the square to watch the music. And on my way, hands would just be flying into my pockets. I'd be fighting off hands that were trying to pickpocket me. And, I'd grab a hand and I'd be like looking at the dude like, I got you. He'd be just like, so it was intense. And when you have I had a teacher who was teaching me some of the percussion, and he was like, no, he's cool. He's a musician. So you kind of get a pass. And my Uncle Leslie had the greatest story, because he was a dancer and he would go to Brazil a lot for carnival and stuff. And he was saying that as long as you were dancing, you were fine. But the moment you stopped dancing, it was like you felt the eyes of the wolves on you. It's an intense culture, and
I mean, when there's poverty, it's always like this, in a sense.
Yeah.
Like there's always, as long as you have something to give, which is entertainment,
yes.
right?
And
then
I think that's the
people don't take
message.
anything else from you, like, because you're already giving, you're entertaining them.
Right.
And entertainment is such a huge trading coin, like it's a huge things to give in exchange that people value a lot.
Well, I'm there because I love their culture.
Yeah.
I love this very dear aspect of their culture, the important aspect, right? So I'm not just taking, right? No. I'm learning, but I'm also giving. I have my clarinet, and we play, and sort of start our own little parades, because it was December, so it was sort of building up towards Carnival, and So I'd get out my horn and me and my teacher, we'd just start playing, and then people would start following us, and it was just like the Pied Piper thing. It was, people were just ready to party. That's the other thing.
I love that.
Especially
from
with the
Brazil,
Brazilian culture. There's, you have intense beauty and magic on one side, and then you have like, somebody throwing a bottle in somebody's face and getting mugged, and it's very dynamic.
Sounds like Naples. Like, unfortunately, that we have something similar as well. Like the Brazilian culture is beautiful. If you guys don't know that they have, in terms of dancing and entertainment, they're just really, they go crazy with it. Like, if you've never been at the Brazilian carnival, you should definitely do magic. That. It's just another level, and they are very, very prone to have fun and to dance in the street and to just let go. And like, I feel like this is really the main feeling that you get there. It's like people are prone to let go and to just be in the moment and enjoy themselves and protect that right, that freedom.
That's right.
And they even have like a samba drum is incredible. Like, guys, like, if you guys don't know that, they have a whole tournament, like we have it for rugby, soccer, and football, and all kinds of sports. They have it for samba.
Yeah.
So the same thing. Like, imagine the same kind of like fuzz.
It's a team sport.
Exactly. Yeah. They have a whole stadium that is basically just a very long, like just a long line, basically, because it's where they have this parade of the samba drum teams. So they don't fight against each other through a game. They fight against each other by having a parade. And so everybody has a parade, and there are hundreds of people dancing on top of these cars and things, and like, it's just incredible what they do. And so basically they have a whole tournament just for samba. So this is their culture. It's like dancing is part of it. It's a serious thing.
It's almost like a sport.
It's a sport.
It's an option. You don't have to be on the football team. You can be on the samba team.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That's how serious it is. You see troops of like 5-year-olds playing the whole drum corps thing, going through different arrangements and stuff. So it's there's so many great aspects.
Yeah, and I love that you chose. I don't know if you chose it intentionally, but you have been kind of attracted towards Africa and Brazil, which are two countries where dancing and music and are so important and so ingrained. It's not just like any other culture. Like, we have music in Italy, we have music everywhere. We have music and dance are really everywhere. But I feel like Africa and Brazil are next level importance. Like, they really use
I started in Africa, and that is the beginning, right? It's almost like I followed the diaspora by going to Brazil and then going to Cuba. Those are the three. That's sort of the trinity of the strongest places where the African music influenced. That just changes the world of music. Has contributed so much on so many levels.
And isn't that crazy that American culture really scapegoated for so long African culture due to slavery and all of these things, and then ultimately what is saving the world and what is saving Americans like you is actually their culture, that is actually bringing finding Americans out of the matrix, out of their ego.
Well, that's the thing there, as far as ego death, which I think really just means expanding beyond the limits of the mind and of the smaller identity, right? So you see that there's many layers going on at once.
Yes.
It's not just slavery and as bad, and white people are terrible conquerors and blah blah blah.
But ego death is really that.
We wouldn't
like,
have so many things. Sure, it could have been done a lot nicer.
Yes.
So many cultures, like, you have the French culture that was actually very much better at preserving traditional musics and culture. That's why we have Louisiana. That's why we have New Orleans, is because of the French actually allowed much more of the music to happen, and the religious practices and stuff. So That's why New Orleans is the way it is, because of the French culture. So the British were pretty good at wiping stuff out, which is, you know, I wish it didn't happen, but it happened. Here we are, you know.
Yeah, but this is all part of, as you're saying, is like that's also ego death. Is understanding that everything is part of a process as much as
that's
you know,
right.
like if you're in a body and you know there is a cell that is a cancer cell and there is a cell that is having its function, and sometimes cells have to die because part of the part of like for example when our hands are created when we are embryos, initially we have like palm hands, like we have like actual epithelium in between our fingers everywhere. And then thanks to programmed cell death, all those parts in between our fingers die, all the cells in between our fingers dies and our hands are formed. So without that, we will not be able to have a hand. And so ultimately everything is in a sense meant to be in a certain way, or ultimately is functional to something, even if through our ego we go through a lot of suffering, and as you're saying, things could be done in a much nicer way, you know. And so it's all the ego. So that's exactly what the ego death is meant to do, to make us understand that you should you know, if you want to build a country, you should just ask people to build it for you if you feel like you can't.
I don't know if anyone's ever done that.
I don't know. I feel like if you pay people, they will do that. You know what I mean? Like I feel like it's a matter of understanding.
I mean, that's also part of. I mean, and I think there's, you know, a way to look at it more from the Vedic perspective. It's not so much a death; it's that something that the relevance changes. Like webbed fingers are not relevant anymore, so they go away. So. A certain aspect of our ego is not relevant anymore, so it goes away in a new, because we need the ego. You can't kill the ego. It's not, the ego is the way that the universe takes into action what needs to get done. And so
otherwise you will not do that. That's exactly. But the ego death is not about killing the ego. It's about having now the ego as a tool, you know, like as you said, like
that's right.
Now you are not Tom. You are your soul in Tom's body, and right now you're Tom, and you are, thanks to being Tom.
But it's important to be Tom. It's important to be Nancy. But find a way to align with the greater movement that is Tom and Nancy. That is the universe. Getting things done through us. For the sake of the entire universe. So, and so our desires are very important. We shouldn't shun them and be ashamed of them. It's more we align them. We align ourselves. You know, and that's where the music comes in. That's where the transcendental practices come in, because it's really just a practice to go beyond the mind and the small measurements of time and space and judgments and discernment, which are very important, but that's, our culture spends too much emphasis on that tool, and that tool is very small and limited. So our experience of life and as beings is so great that I think that transcendental practice is really important. And after, to go further into the story and the timeline, that's, you know, moving to California. You know, before then I was playing for hospice patients, so that was another aspect of my process where I learned to put aside any ego. The playing music for hospice patients is not about performing and how cool my licks are on the guitar. It's how can I serve in this moment? How can I create a rich tone and harmony with my voice and the instrument so that it helps this person release stress and relax.
That's how you align, really.
Yeah, and so that was like 15 years of doing that.
How old were you when you started doing that?
I think it was in my 30s.
That's a pretty, like, because I feel like a lot of, like, you know, we all start with like having a huge ego in some way as when we're young, because as you're saying, the ego is the tool that the universe uses to make us do the things that we're supposed to do anyways, because otherwise nobody will do anything and we will just be still all the time. So we need to have something that kind of like brings us forward, so that we
propels
expand
us, right?
Exactly. And so it's all exactly how it is. But like when you're 30, I feel like, especially from your story, I feel like it emerges also, like I kind of like felt it already, like I could feel that you had an ego as a young guy, you know, because you I feel like you're attractive, and like, you know, and you could actually feel that you had a power, right, as a young guy, or you know, musician, as you're saying, you know, you have a special gifts, and some people see you as someone that has something to give, and you have a special past. So all of those things are things that ultimately are also associated with our ego, right? But then when I love what you said, and at 30 is pretty early to figure that out, you know, and to decide, I'm gonna put all of these aside, I'm gonna put all the rock and roll and all the things aside, and all these, like having the special past and feeling special and being on the stage and all of that, to instead just play music and be of service and use this Tom body and this experience that this Tom allowed me to acquire thanks to the ego that Tom had at that time. I'm gonna use it just to be of service to people that are in a hospice, that are like not really. I'm not gonna have. I mean, I'm sure that nobody clapped, or very few people clapped. You know.
Well, no, I put them to sleep.
Exactly. So
that's kind of the
a
opposite of
being
an entertainer, right?
Exactly.
It's a good thing if people are falling asleep to my music.
Isn't that perfect? So, isn't that beautiful that you went from having the need, because that's also another egoic thing, right? So you have the need for people, for validation. You have the need for validation to see that people enjoy your music. But once you have all of that, when you already know that you're a good musician, you already know that you enjoy music, you already know that you can't get the clapping, right? Once you know that, and it's inside of you already, you have that validation already, then you don't need it anymore, and you can actually be of service, because you're not needy anymore.
And music, even though in my mind, you know, growing up on Led Zeppelin and all the great rock and roll bands, and seeing them and being blown away by someone on stage playing some incredible things, singing something, my own path was not so much that. It wasn't, even though when I play in clubs, I didn't totally like it. You know, the sound was never great. It was I was removed from the people in a way, and I had my own issues with that. I just wasn't totally comfortable. But and now getting into this culture out here of like house concerts and more intimate settings and doing my music healing circles feels much better to me. There's much more of it. I think it's about the intimacy and the power of music in that intimate space. That feels good, you know. So I wasn't really like, I need the applause. I need to get out there.
So you felt the discomfort already.
Yeah. Like it just wasn't. You know, there's all different kinds of musicians. I was more the studio musician, composer, creative guy. I wasn't so much the side man, virtuoso, plays an instrument really well. Like I play a bunch of stuff well, but. You know, because I love music, I can't just stop on one instrument. So there's different kinds of musicians, and I was more of a creative, generative artist type of musician. So I'd end up in the studio a lot, but then getting me out wasn't doing a lot of performing. Actually, it was more doing like the hospice work and finding a way to apply the music in a more intimate, communal way. So. Yeah.
Yes, I love it. Actually, I really love it. And how do you feel like your music taste has changed? I mean, obviously, our music taste changes through age for several reasons, you know, like they have to do with ego and have to do with how the trends changed. But I feel like there is a huge connection between ego death and consciousness and the kind of music you're attracted to. And so and you know, like, this is unfortunately also, I think, very well known to governments and corporations, because I can see how now, for example, rock music has started to be trendy again, especially for the Black community, which are the ones that are kind of like finally getting out of oppression and getting to be the favorite class of people that now are attracted to corporations, and you know, like, as much as white people have been in the past. So it's all waves, and I can see how these waves are being fed through the same cycle that white people have been fed through, which is starting with rock music. And I went through the same cycle that you went through as well. You know, like, even if I was born, I don't know, probably 20 years later, and I feel like I went through the same kind of cycle. Rock music first, and then I mean, I got to drumming now, but like, I'm not a musician. So how do you feel like your music taste changed through time and through your death experiences?
Well, I mean, just as a taste thing, I like things that are well thought out, clever, and emotionally impactful, that are catchy. So it can be just about anything, really. Something that's well done, that's sincere, that there's passion in it, that there's a beautiful expression. It can be the simplest thing in the world. It can be the most complex classical piece, but that there's this essence of divine beauty that's being conveyed. Even if it's just a sexy, girly song like the Taylor Swift thing.
You listen to Taylor Swift?
Well, from my daughter, you know, I get hip to all the stuff through my daughter. But yeah, well, I mean, we'll listen to all kinds of stuff. So a lot of it's, you know, kind of goofy, silly stuff, like Perry Grip, who's like, he writes about food, mostly like tacos. It's just funny stuff, but you know, I appreciate it. I can appreciate it,
because
and I can sing along. I don't find myself to be a musical snob. I've been guilty of that though from time to time, but with certain things, I think. But I'm pretty open, I'd say, as long as it's well done. And I think for the most part, you know, I don't listen to music a lot. Because I have music, I am music. I'm also listening to music all the time in the studio as I'm working. So the last thing I want to do is go listen to music when I've been mixing my own songs or working with a client. I'll listen to things for influence. I'll take things in. I like, you know, actually meeting people, you know, in the flesh, like, you know, working with Colin Martin, and I like him. I like Jared. So different musicians. Milo's great on the classical guitar, so we've been jamming. I like in-person stuff now, rather than this sort of removed, like,
connection now.
Yeah, it's nice to just connect, because I like to play and connect and just be moved in the room by somebody playing, and that's nice. But yeah, I go through phases, but I don't actually listen to probably as much music as you'd think.
And so would you feel like, regardless, because now obviously you're settled and you have your own recording studio and you have artists, and please reach out if you guys need anything, because he's really an expert producer, and he has a recording studio in Pasadena, so he's incredible. And I don't know if people can find on your website. We're gonna link his website
I'm all
afterwards.
over. Tom Rossi, Spotify, Apple Music.
Yeah. Can people find your, like, the artists that you produce on your website, or
Yes, one of the ones that I love to work with was Renee Stahl, and she has a project called Renee and Friends, and I produced an album called Kindred, which has a lot of great stuff. We worked with Ziggy Marley. We did a cover of Cat Stevens' Where Do the Children Play, which is really nice. That really worked out, and they sang duet on that, and Lisa Loeb was on that, and yeah, a few great people, and that was really fun. And then I have my own stuff, and my stuff ranges from singer-songwriter to world music to ambient music. So I got some new stuff coming out. Finishing up I have a bunch of, I have like an album of stuff, a couple of different albums that have been sitting on the shelf for a long time. So I'm finishing them up, as well as putting out new stuff. So one old tune that's about 15 years old, I wrote it after I watched Martin Scorsese's bio on Bob Dylan. So I was really influenced by the Dylan vibe. And I wrote this
15 years,
song.
like you started writing it 15 years
I
ago.
wrote it 15 years ago. It was done. I had a few songs. I had about a 5-song EP of singer-songwriter type stuff that I just didn't end up releasing.
Why?
You know.
Who
knows? I don't know.
I've written so many books and things that I haven't published yet. So I understand what you mean.
Things take time and life happens, and it's just like that. Some pieces of art get released when you make them, and some they just come out when they're ready to come out.
So you feel like it's not because you don't resonate with them anymore, you don't think, because a lot of artists are very picky, and I'm the kind of artist that when I finish something, then I already don't like it. I used to already not like it anymore. Now I'm more stable in my growth in the sense that now I've reached a more mature stage in which I'm more into a kind of whenever I create something, it's like a labor, and then I can feel that when the kid is ready, I can pop it out, so I can tell that it's ready. And so maybe, do you feel like you have incubated this for 15 years?
Well, I haven't thought about it that whole time. It's more like I got the mixes to a certain point. I got the idea pretty clarified. And then other things happened. I had work. I didn't quite get to it. And then it just got left behind. And so it's nice to come back to it and just give it a fresh mix, because my ears have evolved. I hear things a different way. So if this one's coming out, it's called All of Her Splendor, and it's really on the masculine and the divine, the masculine surrendering to the feminine, and I'll let you hear it and make up your own mind. But
okay, I'm curious. You're gonna be linking his Spotify and his website, and so you guys can find him. And so do you feel like so without talking about right now, because obviously right now you're settled, you're an artist and you work with people, so it's a completely different dimension. But do you feel like throughout your growth, throughout your development, do you feel like the music you needed to listen to change? And I will explain the scientific reason behind my question later on. But it's, what do you feel like you changed, and how throughout your growth from I would say when you were probably 10 years old to when you were 40?
In some ways it changes in a superficial way, but I think the need is the same. I'm looking for sincerity. I'm looking for cool ideas that I've never thought of. That was one of the things that always still blows my mind to this day, that a new song pops up into my awareness and I'm like, fuck, I can't believe someone thought of that. That's such a great idea. Wow. That's just a beautiful melody. Just this awe of the infinity of the universe through song like that, and even if just one person like Paul Simon or Taylor Swift can just generate song after song that has so many juicy melodies and catchy little things and lyrical ideas. I'm really it doesn't really change, I think, because I started out with Kiss and Michael Jackson and then Led Zeppelin when I got older and cooler,
When was that?
That was 14, 13, 14. That's when I picked up electric guitar, and it was do 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 learning all the Zeppelin riffs, and it was great. And I spent a whole year listening to just the album Physical Graffiti by Led Zeppelin, and I put that on 20 years later, and taking a shower, listening to physical graffiti, I start crying because it just brings back this pure emotion of freedom. I think freedom, like I said before, music is transcendental. It reveals the transcendental field immediately. So we associate that with freedom, with bliss, with, in the transcendental state, there's nothing to do or to be. That's just we are. It's bliss. We're the source of the universe. That's our true identity. And so that's how it was. It feels like freedom. It feels like, I think that's what music gives all of us, is access to these deeper states of emotion, of feeling, so.
Yeah, that's true. That's beautiful. And so you went from rock music to what kind of music were you playing afterwards?
When I left the United States to live in Africa, I was sort of done with rock music. I didn't want to hear another guitar solo.
So you were done. So this is important, I feel like, because we're here talking about this journey related to the ego death, obviously, but I feel like when people progress and really go, like you kind of like have to go. You have to keep going because you get to a point where you're disgusted. Like you're like either disgusted or you have discomfort for the cocoon you're in. Like you really feel like
that's right.
You have painful. I have to
graduate to a new state of relevance and find things that are relevant to the new state that is more aligned with where I'm going and what I'm doing, and what I want to create. So, no more Led Zeppelin. I wanted voodoo drums. I wanted traditional music. I wanted deep African stuff, Indian. I listened to Ravi Shankar and King Sunny Ade, Fela Kuti. But even beyond those guys, those are pop guys. Getting into like the drums in the village in different parts of Africa and Ghana. I was in Ghana for 3 months, in Togo for 4 months, 7 months altogether in Ghana. It's like living. It's really like changing my state and actually living there as a African.
There's a lot. I feel like for an American going so far and living as someone from there, like it's pretty big. Like how did you even get to decide to go to Africa? Like, did you just go by yourself?
Well, I had my girlfriend Megan was in the Peace Corps.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she was stationed in Togo, and I was painting houses and saving up money in Seattle, Washington. Had a house with a bunch of guys, and we were all musicians, and it was great. And it was very communal, and we'd jam at each other's houses, and that's where I really started exploring the drums, the hand drums. I had a furry little set of bongos and whatever. I didn't know what I was doing, but I loved it. And I played flutes and kalimbas, and that's where I really opened up beyond the guitar. And then going to Africa was just, it blew the roof off, because I knew it would change my life forever. Just the whole influence, and then the musicality just shifted everything completely, and it gave me an edge. It gave me a deeper knowledge, an ancient knowledge of a deep fundamental of music through the lens of West Africa, which is very unique and very powerful in its own way.
Don't you feel like, so I perceive everything as an hyperbola, right? Like we all go away from the origin, and then we make things more complicated, but then we tend to go back to the origin, right? And so rock music is ultimately, we started with African music, right?
Yeah.
And then we made it more complicated, more fancy, snobby, or more kind of geometrical, if you understand the word that I'm trying to say. It's more electrical instead of electronic, instead of analogic, digital more than analog.
Well, just as rap was starting to be popular, as they released the first Batman movie, there was all this new culture that was really starting to be pushed into the mainstream in the 90s, there in the early 89, 90 was when I was in Togo and Ghana.
And the 90s are very far from the origin. I feel like it's a time in which we really went pretty far from the land, pretty far from the, like, the traditions. We
Sure.
went for like very high in urbanization and
Yeah.
TVs and movies, all of these things, in ways that we're not even portraying.
Yeah.
You're talking about Batman. Batman is ultimately a story that is like a dystopian story, it's a way of portraying a world that is
Right.
kind of morbid also, and kind of like not very happy in a
Yeah,
sense. It's
well,
all
that was the
gray
thing. I
and-
saw that American culture was going in a certain direction with the popularity of rap music, which on one sense I was going to the source, right? And because the thing that rap brought into the popular zeitgeist was different feels of grooves and beats, which were very African, which were non-Western, sticky, like,
like what you're saying.
Like this swingy, like sticky groove stuff that they'd start bringing in. And I'm like, that's fucking Ghana, man. That's a groove from, that's like, because they don't play just in like a straight 4/4. They're gonna like push it into like a 6 feel. They get real sticky, and it's all about feel. It's all about this real beautiful swing, not a loose swing, but a nice tight swing. It's not flat, but it's like got this beautiful magic in it. And so I heard that in rap music, like, oh, that's what you guys are doing. I'm seeing the African culture in America reincarnate this deeper African sensibility into the rap music, right? And I was like, I see that.
I knew that you
You
had
know,
seen
I-
that. That's why
and
I'm
so-
exactly asking you these questions, because I
That
feel
was
like what
that was beautiful.
I think what you did is just really like you felt the beats and you skimmed away the parts that had been put on top. Like
Yeah,
from an architectural
that's right.
standpoint, like
Yeah.
we have gone through a lot of times. These are waves that happen in humanity a lot of times. We went from the Renaissance to the Baroque, which is like something that is more, pompous,
Baroque,
right?
yeah.
And after the Baroque, we went through the Rococo, which is even more like it's like kitsch, right? At that point, it's a kitschy kind of. So same thing, like we tend to start from something that is very simple, which is traditional culture.
Right.
Now we put a lot of things on top, and we make it,
Right.
we make it in ways that we think we are making it easier, but we're actually making it more complicated. And ultimately, if you're aligned, you see through all of these things, and you recognize the actual beats and the actual vibes. You're like, wait a minute, this is the origin of this, and so let me go
Right.
back to the origin. So basically, you skimmed away
Right.
all the things put on top of
That's right.
what was at the origin, and you went back.
And
to
what's
the
put on
origin.
top is what you're talking about, is the sort of ego aspect,
Yes.
this superficial thing, and then you're getting into like political agendas where you're creating this cliche about, black people and
The rock
African,
you're talking
yeah, like that's the part. I love the expression. I love the, just the origin of it, the way, but you could see how the elite culture, the sort of, the reason why it's so visible is there's also a darker reason to create a division in the culture, to make a cliche about one type of person or another, that okay, this is what black people are like, criminal, sexist,
yeah.
and this is such bullshit, because here I am in Africa, and these folks are so elegant and have such dignity, and with in America too, that you have the not just music, the jazz and the blues and the folk and the whatever that everybody's playing. It doesn't matter what color you are, but
But
it's
people, like
it's
most of them
yeah.
are Christian too. They
Yeah,
go to
of
churches,
course.
they tend
Beautiful
to be very-
family, strong
Yeah.
community, good people. So you see that in the popular culture, things get manipulated by political agendas, and you're kind of like, okay, I see that. All right, I just give me the depth.
Yeah.
I'm hanging in Africa. I'm hanging in Cuba. I'm in Brazil. I have my own path, and I saw all that stuff. And, you know, then gradually, you know, I eventually came out here, and coming from my hospice patient work, I then found working with ayahuasca, so that was my other ego death, I suppose, which, you know, gave me another aspect of the music, of playing in that sensitivity was very powerful. And it also opened up my voice in a deeper way and connected to a lot of heart, mind, body connection through that work. So yeah, that was a next
We've never
level.
talked properly about the ayahuasca in this podcast, so I feel like I would like for you to give, because you've been working in ayahuasca, you've been playing in ayahuasca for a long time, I would like for you to give a proper introduction to what the ayahuasca is and why would you be playing in it.
Well, I have a very good friend who's a trained medicine man in the Shipibo culture, and that was my first introduction, was with him. And he could see, because I did the hospice work, that I had the proper sensitivity to serve with the music, and so it was kind of a seamless transition. And you know, it was a powerful and a wonderful time. It was a magical time of growth and exploration to work with plant medicine like that, to be in the effect of it, and then do my own work with the medicine, but then also to be able to convey the music in that sensitivity for others and serve in that way was really powerful.
I'm actually impressed of how can you even play while you're under the effect of the ayahuasca. So just to give a brief introduction, the ayahuasca is a beverage that is made of different kind of like a mix of two plants, two vines, and they're boiled and like reduced a lot to the point that they become these black beverage. And is their whole like ceremonies are like considered religious ceremonies in which their people drink this beverage and go through a whole psychedelic, you can call it psychedelic journey, but it's really a journey into healing and trauma healing and ego death. And there are people who do it a lot of times, there are people who do it once, and shamans and musicians who play at the ceremonies, because the ceremony includes music, which I believe is a major part of the healing of guiding the journey, which is really the music that people play. And so there are musicians that play and shamans that guide the ceremony and people that help, and everybody drinks the same drink. And so it's still everybody, even the shamans and the guides and the musicians go through the journey themselves. And sometimes included in the journey there is, especially at the beginning, before doing the ayahuasca, a lot of times, the first times that people do that, there is a lot of purging sometimes, or it depends.
Yeah, but that's what it is. It's a purgative.
Exactly, but not like, I feel like after a long time, not necessarily, if you don't have anything to purge, like a lot of shamans say that they only feel like very present, because ultimately what the ayahuasca does in the long term is to reactivate part of the brain that are dormant, and once you have reactivated those parts, you are that person the whole time. You don't need to redo the ayahuasca all the time to be that, but when you do, you're just simply very present in that mindset that it's already you all the time. You just get rid of the egoic layer that you have put on top in between. And so how can you, like, how was the experience of playing and having to go through your own journey? Because I think that's a lot. I'm always very glad for musicians.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's one of those experiences. It's not for everybody. Just like a lot of different healing modalities and medicinal rituals and stuff. For the first sort of half, I would be in my own journey, purging and stuff, so I couldn't play.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but then I would sort of, in the second half is when I would sort of come out of my personal experience, and then, you know, because I would be working with my friend, and I'd work with other facilitators as well, and that would, you know, each one is different really, Some of them, like I was saying, I'd sort of play in the second half after I had my own experience. And some I would take a small dose, so I could still be in the effect, but I would play the whole time, and support and be a supportive energy, and it was part of my path, and it was very effective in some very deep ways, and I think it ultimately led me to the next stage, which was discovering transcendental meditation, the Vedic meditation technique. Which
so wait, let's not move to the Vedic meditation yet. Let's talk.
What else are you
I wanna
curious
talk more about how the ayahuasca
how it
changed
felt?
you. Because how many times did you do that?
A lot. Over 3 years, probably about 30 sits, 30 times.
Yeah.
So a good bit. And it was, everything is so sensitive, everything is so heightened. I'll never forget the first time it was time for me to play, and I had just sort of come out of my own personal experience, and I reached for my guitar, and I touched the string. I hardly even strummed it, and it was just, the resonance was so powerful that I didn't do much at all. I was just lightly stroking the strings and playing a few notes, and it was like a massive symphony in my lap, that I couldn't do too much at all, because of the sensitivity. I didn't need to, and that was beautiful. That was just powerful. And then gradually it opens up, and I'm sort of have some more agency about what I'm playing and singing, and depending on who the facilitator is, I'm sort of working with them as well. Because in the Shipibo tradition, and typically I'm not sure if this is a Western thing, but in the older traditions, as far as I know, especially in the Shipibo, the people that are in the ceremony don't necessarily drink. The shaman drinks. And then he sings, and the beautiful part of the Shipibo tradition is the songs, the ikaros that they sing, are designed to help, to penetrate through, to open blocked energy, to reveal things. They're very deliberate songs sung in a very special way. So traditionally, it's not like everyone's just jamming and singing. They're very specific songs, and they're calling in aspects of the universe to help, and they're focusing them, and they'll do it generally in the room, or they'll go around to each person and sing personally to you to open things up, to work the medicine, help it move through your body in a way that can help you and reveal things. So that's the more deeper traditional thing. I think in the West, everyone wants to drink ayahuasca and feel the effect.
They don't understand the music part of it. This is so important instead.
Yes,
absolutely.
yes,
and there are a lot of
yes.
Places where there is no. In fact, is the worst part of it, because now there are a lot of people who perform the ayahuasca in the United States, right? And so, but those are oftentimes not traditional shamans, and so there is not even live music, and instead the live music is absolutely essential to it. It needs to be done in a certain way, because important. It's part of the journey.
Yes, and you have to be very careful, and you want to do your research about who you're working with. Absolutely. And it's not for everybody, and it's also, it's one way up the mountain. It's also, funny enough, in the kirtan tradition, in the ancient kirtan, it's also like nowadays we sing along as a call and response. Well, it wasn't always that way. Traditionally, it's the rishis and yogis. They sing the mantras, and everyone is in a meditative state and receives the mantra.
It's a completely
similar
different
thing where the shamans and the rishis are the ones who are in the resonant experience and conveying it through song, to the receivers, to the people, and we absorb it into our practice, into our meditation, into our bodies, and work with it there. So it's much more of a like that. Where at kirtan today everyone's sort of singing along and it's a call and response. This is more of a modern expression, which is fun. It's great, but it's good to know where these traditions come from, and
to skim back, right? To go back there. I like that you always try to go back to how things are traditionally done, because ultimately traditions are important, not to be traditional, but because oftentimes we do change traditions for no reason, just for egoic purposes, that we just go away from the source. And we should have not, in the sense that, like there are a lot of religions that, like, what is the Amish, I think, that they allow their kids to explore the world and then come back if they want to be Amish.
I'm not sure.
I think it's the Amish that do that, or the Mormons. I think it's the Amish. And
you just give them an iPhone and
because
just
it's like,
send them
yeah,
off
you
in
get,
the world.
they're
Good
like,
luck.
yeah, you know what, go and do your thing. And if you want to be in this religion, you come back, because ultimately all of us have to have this hyperbolic journey in which we all go through.
It's more of a balance of experience, right?
Yeah, because you don't know what you're losing. You don't
That's
value
right.
things until you lose them, in a sense. So obviously if you get bored of your traditions, like, oh, this is just traditional, let me go to rock, let me go to this, let me go to rap, let me go to and they're like, you know what, these drums were already more than enough. But you know that only after you have done the whole circle, right? And then you come back. And so same thing as kirtan or ayahuasca.
Well, yeah, and even with yoga, which is misinterpreted in the West.
Yeah.
It's really just stretching. Asana, asana, and even that culture, it's similar in the kirtan and the shipibo, where yoga is a practice of union, and it's the main thing is your meditation practice, and the asana, the stretching, is so you can prep your body to sit in meditation. The stretching is not the end game, which is we kind of
we have
here,
westernized things. This is like
it certainly can be very
things.
involved and beautified and enjoyed, but it's not the end game. The end game is your practice of union, which is through meditation, which is through which is dropping into the transcendental field. All of these things are techniques and ways for us to get beyond the mind and into the ocean of being.
And yoga ultimately does it. Like the poses, as you're saying, are partly, the poses are the asanas, like are partly ways of prepping the body so that you can, with a certain after a certain time of practice, have a certain kind of pose, like the lotus pose, for example, that allows you to align your channels in your spine. Because without being able to do certain poses, you're not going to be able to align your channels and to have a proper energy flow. And so, as he's saying, really, like a lot of the yoga practice that we do today in the United States, the practice of yoga today in the United States is really the stretching side of it, like the part of it that was for prepping. And obviously it's always good, like something is always better than nothing, and so it's always good to give people exposure to yoga, even if it's not what the yoga was actually supposed to be. But it's important to not stop there, as he did, like I like that.
And even
it's all about keeping
the certain postures and sequences, some of them are for war, like warrior pose.
Because you have to prep
so not everyone
everything,
needs to be doing warrior asana, because we're not going to battle and bows and arrows and stuff.
Everything can be used. Can be used. Like ultimately, every tradition has been created for a reason. It's functional, like we haven't touched on that specifically now, but like you had told me in the previous episode that even the Vodun and all the music in Africa was actually part of they're ingrained, it's ingrained in their culture. Like they go to a music concert as much as they go to the doctor. Like it's a way of healing that is ingrained in their culture as much as for Native Americans they go to do Temazcal, you know, like, so it's the same thing. So all of these things are really ingrained, and same for yoga. So yoga was not just, this is what the ego does, right? The ego creates everything, makes everything into an object. And so we have objectified yoga.
That's
we
right.
have removed it from its function. We have objectified
Yes.
music. We have removed it from its function. We have objectified food.
That's
we have
right.
removed it from its function. So that's the egoic modality. So once you have, having an ego death means going back to the source and remembering why those things were in place in, you know, at the beginning. So why did we even create music? Why did, and it was initially a way
and that's part of the
expressing
oscillation
ourselves.
of what we're doing here, right? We are the universe having a human experience, and part of the point is to completely be in the relative world and get lost
Yeah.
and find our way back. You know, that's what this back and forth is.
Yeah.
You know,
the waves.
That's
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Or just expanding to just recontracting. And I think from this we could easily guess that most likely the universe is circular in the sense that the universe is currently expanding in waves, but most likely the universe is like a being that expands and contracts as much as we expand and contract in so many ways. We're already doing that in so many ways. I feel like we can guess from how the universe works, from our mundane world works, that the universe is a being that expands and then contracts and goes back to itself, and we're doing it like in waves, step after step, in all kinds, like everything in our reality is really about growth and then going back to the source, you know.
That's right.
Expansion and
That's
then
right.
contraction again.
That's
And
right.
so we do that, and this is where the ego death comes in, when you realize all of this, that you're just part of this mechanism that keeps going, and that you're like all of this pain that we feel, all of this discomfort, and all of this, you know, I have to be this, and I have to be that, and I have to do this, and I have to do that. And, you know, skin colors, and like dividing people, all of these things are just ultimately serving this purpose of these waves that are out of our control.
That's right.
That are the universe that expands and contracts, and contracts in different layers, in different things, and that the more we keep, as the ocean, it starts dark, as we started having darker skins, right? And then it goes towards the final layer of the waves, which is white, and then we go back to the source, which is darker. You know,
it's a case of an identity dance. You know, when we're field identified, where like everything is, we get our identity from the world around us.
Yeah.
But then in our practices, in our deepening practices, we start to identify with the inner world and the source.
It is particle that we are, but then
Right.
we have to go back to the source.
Yeah, and this is the work, and I think at my age I've been through all kinds of stuff, and to the point now where I have a daily practice that supports this greater identity. So I now get to experience more of that. Whereas, you know, when I was younger, I was just sort of kind of getting blown around by the wind. I'd sort of hold on to something and get some direction here, get some direction there. But, you know, now it's like I through this simple technique and the way that I'm, absorbing this more helpful knowledge, I'm tethered to something bigger, and I can feel that alignment happen in my daily life, and the things that I'm doing, and the people I'm gravitating to, and what I'm creating.
I love it. I can feel it. I can feel this feeling that you're just telling me about. I just channeled it. I love it.
Yeah.
And tell me more about the Vedic meditation that you were saying.
Yeah, it's such a simple technique, and it's just about effortlessness. It's about, again, we're so emphasized in the mental, in the intellect, in our culture, in the seen world. Like, if you can't see it, who cares? It's not there. It's not real. trust the science, all of this stuff. And in my experience, and everybody needs to sort of find their own way to this, and I think we all do in different ways. You don't necessarily have to find it through the ancient Indian culture and meditation, but we find it in different ways, and that there's just something greater, that we're not a part of it, we are it. I am the universe, you're the universe, here we are, we're just in these separate, seemingly separate incarnations, because you're helping the universe get things done in the Nancy way.
Yeah.
I'm doing it in the Tom way.
Yeah.
And this, just to actually feel this, it's not a concept, I feel it these days. And I'm say about 3 years into doing this meditation, 20 minutes twice a day. And it works, it's real. It's just, I think that's all it is in India is such a fabulous culture in creating these techniques that are pretty simple and pretty straight ahead if you just practice them. The whole thing with the prayer beads, the 108 prayer beads.
The mala, is that called the mala that
Yeah.
is that beads kind of necklace?
Mala beads, right.
Exactly. It is like usually hand knotted and it has 108 beads. Always counted so that you kind of can tell your mantra 108 times. It's a way of like the rosary, a lot of different cultures have this idea of having to go through
That's right.
beads. It's a way of
and you can get all
mindless.
religious-y about it. Oh, there's meaning, blah blah blah. Oh, don't put them on the ground. Oh, they're sacred, blah blah blah. You know what? It's just 108 is a certain amount of time, and if you do your mantra for 108 beads, it gives you about 15 minutes to 20 minutes of being in this state of practicing transcendence. That's all it is. It's time. People get, that's the thing you see again, the ego comes in, you want to put some religious significance on it, some sacred thing. Yeah. It's just a very clever way that ancient people were like, I know people are going to fuck this shit up somehow with some ego stuff. It's 108, it's a great number. It's, it's aligned with the whole 369, numerology thing. Fine, great. That's another kind of fancy ego thing to put on it, but it's really just going to give you about 15 minutes of dropping in.
And it's mindless. That's the beauty
simple,
of
the
beads, because it's mindless. Like if
right.
you have to think and to count, like when
That's
I
right.
teach my classes, I tell people that I'm gonna be counting. They don't have to count how many seconds,
That's right.
how many, because
and
if you start counting, you're
mindless,
using the mind. Yeah.
Not dependent on
exactly.
your
So if you
analytical mind.
use just your these beads, you just know that you have to go from one bead to another with your fingers, and once you get to the end point, which there is a special bead at the end of it, right? So once you get to the end, you're done. And so you don't need to be mindful of what you're doing, the mindfulness, right?
That's right.
You have to be mindless. That's the whole point we need to
And that might be the only break you ever get in the day from your mind.
And that's enough.
And that might be enough, And, there's been scientific studies on all this that, in this particular practice of transcendental meditation, they've taken about a few hundred people into a war zone, and they practiced this particular technique, and the conflicts either ceased or reduced massively. And when they left and stopped, it went back up. So there's several studies on that. So it's a very real thing. It's a very real thing. So even if you get 15 minutes once a day, it's not only contributing to your own health and happiness and alignment, it's affecting the collective.
And people around you specifically, like
That's right.
more like the because I feel like a lot of people don't resonate much with the collective,
Right.
But like your family is around you, and it's all a matter of if you perpetuate trauma, as much as you react to people in an egoic way, you trigger their own ego, and then they react to you back in an egoic way, and so you create this back and forth, that ultimately perpetuates an egoic reality, drama that doesn't make any sense. And so if you're that much that withdraws from the fire that is spreading, then you stop it.
Yeah.
Because it cannot perpetuate through you, and so that's all you need to do. Really.
Yeah.
That's all you need to do to heal yourself, so that you stop perpetuating things. And so if people
That's right.
are in the egoic modality around you, and you are meditating 15, 20, 30 minutes, 40 minutes per day, which I think is actually really good. Like doing it twice a day is perfect, because it's a way of really starting your day and finishing your day, or starting your day in the middle of your day, or like reiterating.
Well, the great thing about this technique is that you don't want to go more than 20 minutes.
Okay.
The idea is that you're training yourself, your consciousness, to be able to drop into the unified field right away. In fact, you're encouraged to meditate in playgrounds or in noisy places, as long as you can be comfortable, eyes closed, and not in danger or anything. You don't obviously do it driving, but so you want to train yourself, because ultimately you want to be able to access a state at any time, and that's what the yogis do that have been practicing and are masters at this. But for us householders, us common folk, it's an incredible shift to have this in one's life. And not everybody needs to. It's there's also scientific studies on the 1 in 100 is all you need. 1%, that's it. And I think a lot of things have been happening because since the pandemic, more people have been shifted into real spiritual practices, like real stuff, not just woo-woo stuff, but like really like, I gotta get my shit together. And meditation helps, so I'm doing it now. That's what I do. That's it. That's what I do. And I think just more people like myself have done that, and I think it's actually affecting the timelines of the world that we're heading down now. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's all a journey that is really like it goes this way, like, and I feel like I have a whole like theory and about what actually happened during the pandemic. I'm not gonna say anything right now here, but like really, like I feel like nobody thought that during the pandemic that was gonna happen. That what was gonna happen was that people will actually get more into their ego death and into spiritual practice. I think that was a side effect that nobody was expecting to happen. And now it's happening, because that's how the universe works. It's just everything is perfectly designed, and so the more you push, the more you traumatize the universe, the more the universe responds by creating a flower on the other side.
That's right. I mean, that's what happens. I think with everything.
We're being cautious. Like we're being more conscious now.
Every contraction, there's expansion. Every annihilation is room for new growth.
Exactly. And this is beautiful. And so the Vedic meditations, because it's funny, because I also play and meditate without knowing about the fact that they actually encourage that. I meditate near a playground, and I've done it for years now, and I found it extremely helpful. I tell it to my students all the time that I prefer to meditate outdoor, and I host my classes outdoor, because it's like, if you can't isolate, if you can't be present and use the sounds around you to bring you back to present, and you feel bothered by the sounds around you, that means you're in your mind.
You don't want to be too precious and brittle. You want to be resilient. You're building a resiliency. And it's a resiliency of true identity, really, that you are this deeper experience.
Yes.
And only when we get thrown off is when we're in our smaller identity.
Yeah. When you try to be this small person separate from everything else, it's when you're easier to be wiped out, because if you're like sturdy and you're like, I'm actually the whole,
that's right,
nothing can throw you out. Nothing can bother you, because you are the kid that is playing in the playground. You are the tree whose leaves are moving through the wind. You are the bird that is chirping. You are all of these things. And when you are all of these things, you're not the little person trying to think about the little task that you have to do for work and for survival. You're everything. So you stop being
you're
this
also
fragile being.
Invincible to toxic behavior. You see that if someone's coming at you with some aggressive energy, or it's their state of consciousness, it has nothing to do with you. And when I feel grounded in my identity and my experience, I can see it, I can feel it, and I'm not so pulled off my center, you know. But it's these practices, it's this really settling into a regular thing, and that's real self-love, it's real self-care.
You want to give more a description of this Vedic, what you actually do, your Vedic
yeah, it's basically, it comes from a lineage in India, in Rishikesh, and it is sort of a distilled version for the householder modern world of it's doing 20 minutes twice a day of a internal mantra, a bija mantra, which is the seed mantra, which is it's unspoken, unwritten, but it's a sound, and your teacher gives it to you, sort of whispers it in your ear, and then you sort of listen for that in your mind, and you're loosely paying attention to it, because it's really about effortlessness, and in that you get to the edge of they say the least excited state. So you can sort of start to feel it gets nice and glowy and fuzzy and floaty, and your mantra is sort of fading, and then when you sort of come back, you realize that maybe you thought it was just 5 minutes, but it was 20 minutes that just passed by, or 10 minutes, and you sort of start to feel this shift of time, and because you can't cognize the experience there, because there's no thoughts in this pure state, but you know it by when you come out of it, you're aware of a blissful, very deeply contented, deeply rested feeling. In this meditation practice, you get, I think, 5 or 10 times more rest than an 8 hours night's sleep. So it's really, essentially, it's just a mechanical technique to release stress, and you're letting your body, you're stilling the mind, you're just focusing through the mantra. It's like the music seduces the mind immediately, right? That's why music is so powerful in all of our cultures. But this way you use a mantra, which is kind of same. It's sort of this mellifluous rhythm that you're listening to inside yourself, and that sort of seduces them enough. It's enough to seduce the mind, to be curious to the mind, and the mind will gravitate towards things that benefit, that feel good. So it will over time, and not very long. I felt the difference in the first week. I've definitely felt amazing stuff, and then it just starts to grow after that. Like just the calmness. I mean, I have no sleep problems. My immune system is pretty great. I don't really get sick. So there's incredible benefits, because stress is the number one.
Stress is the only reason why we get sick. Even fractures are caused by stress, in the sense that if you were present, you would have not fallen, probably. You know what I mean? So it's really like stress is really the main source of everything. And what you're describing is really like transcendental meditation, basically. Which is what
it's the same thing as they all come from the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, which his teacher gave to him. Maharishi really just systemized it and blew it up into this global teaching. And it's pretty great. It's pretty awesome. What else did I want to say about it? It's like you're kind of getting ahead of the 8 ball, the stress 8 ball. You basically, in doing it twice a day, you're releasing more stress than you're taking on, because we're not going to avoid getting stressed. We'll get stressed. That's not the problem. It's holding on to stress. And how our bodies hold on to it with the stories we tell ourselves, with the thing, oh, she said that, she didn't do that, he didn't call me back. Whatever it is, we hold on in our bodies. And this is a way, because there's a lot of trauma therapy and somatic therapy, and all this is great. But it's also, you can do it this way, by just minimal effort, sticking with this technique, and then you will start to get to a point where you are releasing more stress than you're taking on, and this will allow your body and your physiology to align, to be more nourished in
to regenerate.
ways.
Yeah, because everything is really like a balance.
Yep.
And like from a scientific standpoint, and I teach it in my classes too, we do what actually happens when we give mantra. So our brain is mostly made by three parts. The innermost part is the reptilian brain. Then there is the limbic brain, which is around it, and then there is the cortical brain, which is the most external part.
Mm-hmm.
So what you want to do is literally want to start reactivating your cortical brain, because it's the most evolved part, which is where consciousness is.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in your conscious brain, in your cortical brain, you're conscious. You're just conscious and you're present. You're vigilant, but you're not in your fight or flight mode, which is the part of the mind. What we call the mind, and the compulsive mind, is really the innermost part of the brain, which is the lesser evolved part. And so what we do with the mantras is really, so because how the brain works is that the innermost part of the brain, which is where the compulsive thinking, compulsive behaviors, habits, even like dependencies, like addictions are there. Codependency and all of these kind of behaviors are really there. And they're triggered by fear of not surviving, fear of like, it's the egoic mind, right? Mm-hmm. And so those parts of the mind really turn off the cortex. So the cortex is there and is ready to be active anytime you allow it to be active. But until you are in your egoic mind, that part cannot activate, because the egoic mind brings it down, so that we can, as you said at the beginning, right, we can have our role in the world. But if we awaken, we don't have to be that role. We can be conscious and understand that that's just the role that we can play, and we have the potential to play, and the universe needs for us to play. And so we play it in a conscious way instead of going through the drama associated with the ego. And so what the transcendental meditation does is basically it gives to your mind, to your egoic mind, they compulsively think all the time fluff that it cannot turn into stress. And so by not turning things into stress, and by using this mantra, and by really like getting deep into this very deep relaxation, because a mantra is a word that doesn't induce you stress and then instead relaxes you. And so if you do it for long enough, you turn off the part of your brain that turns off the cortical brain, and you finally can get back, can allow consciousness to emerge. And so if you allow consciousness to emerge, that's when you get creative. That's when you start focusing on positive things. That's when you start focusing on the reality around you, the truth, instead of focusing on the lie that the ego tells us all the time, which is that we're small.
There's a creative intelligence that becomes more available, and there isn't this fight of things. You're more led by what is charming, what seems to allure you on a deeper way that feels good, right? So there isn't this fight and push to get my thing done and all that. It's more like really being led by a feeling, by a deeper feeling.
Yeah, you're attracted instead of running away from things. Instead of running away from things you're afraid of, you're attracted things that you feel like, this is charming to me. I like it. Let me go towards that.
And it's definitely about action and activity, and you go with those feelings. Like when I want to make a music healing, or I want to do another event, I'm like, let's just try it. I credit the meditation practice to the fact that I've been able to build my music healing business and do events. I was very much in the studio, kind of isolated for years, but this has really gotten me out and gotten me sort of to live a little more boldly and be more connected with this deeper purpose. The universe has poured all these resources into me for a reason, and I'm just sort of humbly acknowledging that, and okay, how can I find ways to plug these resources that I have in me into to serve and to have wonderful experiences playing music and meeting people and all that.
So what is your bigger purpose then with your music? What you when you decide what songs to produce, or what artists to produce, or what kind of things to create to put out there? Do you have a bigger purpose, or do you feel like in yourself you already are a purpose?
I think just what comes to mind is I have my own relationship with music and what it does for me, and what's happening for me when I sing. Like there's a real direct connection to my heart and my voice, and so I know how hard it is to feel deeper things, to have deeper understanding. And I think sometimes a note, a lyric, a melody, a way someone sings something or performs something can open up a door. And I believe that's basically what I'm playing around with, what I'm conveying, what I'm sharing, is that when I was in Brooklyn and I was heartbroken and distraught, I just started singing. I was on this rooftop of my building, and I just started singing until I started crying, until the emotion kind of moved through me. So there's a real connection with that expression. And so I'm just that guy that has this talent and these resources that the universe gave me, that I found and internalized, so I can sing for you to help you access deeper experiences of yourself. It's really a method, a technique to convey this deeper sense of what we are, on a very visceral level.
Yes, I love it.
So whether it's a song or a clever song with nice lyrics or whatever it is, there's something in there that's
you find it like I feel like I love having you here, because I'm really channeling all the things that, like, all the feelings that you're talking about, and feeling them too. And so I can feel that what you are doing actually, so during the previous episodes I've talked about the truth and the fact that there is only one truth, and that ultimately is like, imagine these cylinders, and we all have layers, which are all the layers of our personality. We're energetic, spiritual and everything. And there is a one hole that is the hole for the light of this inner cylinder to come out.
Yeah.
And if you align all those cylinders, the light comes out. So I
That's
feel like
right.
you have you really, when you scan for things, you really find what's aligned and what's the truth. So that's why your music is so beautiful, because you have found, how to recognize the frequency of God. You know how to recognize the divine beauty behind
and express
things.
it, to be heard, because I think that's the beauty of what we are, is that the universe, we're all here because the universe wants to experience itself. And whether you're in the audience or you're on the stage, we're all part of the same universe that's listening to itself and singing to itself, just because oneness is extremely boring.
I mean, we're two here talking to one another about ourselves, ultimately, right? And so it makes sense.
I'm not a dentist. That wasn't my life path.
That mean?
Meaning, like, the dentist may not be able to access these deeper parts of himself, so he comes to somebody like me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right?
So you're basically giving people a service of allowing them to see.
And I've made choices, and I've gone through hard times and things, and wasn't sure of my path, but these days I'm pretty sure, and it feels good to be able to just keep grounding in that, and know that the truck driver or the doctor or the programmer who has a lot of work to do, is working hard, and can't always just have the deeper experiences, but probably has a nagging sensation that there's more to life, will come to a music healing circle, will come to a concert. And I mean, that's why we go to concerts anyways, that's why I do it. We access this bigger thing, whether we see it that way or not, whether we're conscious of it or not. That's what we're doing.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
I love it. So you're really having a function in the universe through the Tom's body and through
Yeah.
what Tom allows you to be, like the
Yeah.
potential, because we all have a potential based on our background, our story,
Yeah.
what we've been through in life, what kind of things we discovered,
Yeah.
what kind of things we unraveled of the universe, and all these surface level that we experience directly through our senses, and that we believe this is it, right? But
Yeah.
we all through our lifetime go through in different ways. We realize how this is just a fictitious layer and we are the whole. And so once we understand how to recognize the truth, then we can give it to those who are too
Yeah.
busy to make the same choices that
That's
we
right.
made, that had a
That's
different
right.
journey. So we can give to them our experience so that they can, it's like a way of compensating, a way of giving. You know, each one of us is a frequency in a spectrum of light, and so if we all shine, everybody of us is gonna have a deeper experience, a more whole experience,
Yeah.
thanks to the fact that Tom is shining, Tom is having his function,
Yeah.
Nancy is having her function,
That's right.
everybody's having their own function in in this universe that we are, and thanks to that we all experience us, the
Yeah.
universe,
Yeah.
in its wholeness. But if Tom was not doing his function, performing its role, there will be a part missing, which is
Yeah.
music, which
That's
is the truth through music, through sound, or through all the experiences that you had in your life that
Yeah.
you have shared with us today. So all of this is really part of giving people your experience of the truth, your experience of the ego death, your experience of shedding away and skimming away all the things that you really didn't need, and that brought you ultimately to understand, the light of truth and the light of consciousness and the light of oneness. So thank you so much
Yeah.
for being with us today and
Thank you
for
for having me.
sharing. Yeah, of course. I was very, very excited to have you again here, and this has been beautiful because I usually interview people on Zoom, and it's beautiful anyways. But having you here as you're talking and being able to
Much
feel
better.
the same feelings that you
Yeah.
were talking about, it was beautiful because I can really feel that what you're saying, like the Vedic meditation, all the things you describe, they truly give you a deeper feeling of oneness. They truly give you a deeper purpose. They truly make you feel like you're following your gut and you're following your instinct,
Yeah.
and you're allowing yourself to be attracted. This is key. You're allowing yourself to be attracted in a mindless way to things, and to be like, if I'm a vessel for God.
And trust it.
Yeah, and
That
trust
the
it.
mind
Yeah.
is not the be all end all decider and discerner and measure of value. You know what I mean? There's a whole giant experience that most of us are really missing, because we're not we don't know how to access it. So, and even in the tradition, the balance, our nervous systems are designed to hold more energy, to have a balance of the transcendental field and the relative field. That's, our nervous systems are designed that way as humans. We're not necessarily better, but we are a more sophisticated evolution of animals on this planet. We're neurocentric. We are creative, energy centric. So we do have this. So our modern lives are very lacking in this transcendental balance.
Yeah.
See, so
Yeah, for a long time we have really gotten stuck
Yeah.
into the mundane world, and understanding that we are, even if we don't see that and we don't touch it, we have an all spiritual body, and like our energetic body is much bigger than our physical body. And even if our senses currently, because most likely we're gonna go towards an evolution that also will allow us, a lot of people today see auras, for example. I see auras too if I want, like you can focus and see auras for people. So we're most likely going to evolve towards a future in which people are going to be able to experience more steadily and more, better our energetic body, our spiritual self, which is everything else that is transcendental and is like another dimension that to us, to our bodies today, feels as something that we need to find because we can see it, we can touch it, but maybe in the future we're going to be evolving to the point of being able to perceive it too, and to be able to be more in tune with it without having to guess so much. You know, today we're like going so much into our intuition and trying to having faith is a huge portion of what you're saying. A lot of people don't know how to access the transcendental because they don't trust their intuition, they don't have faith that there is a transcendental. And instead, if you have faith that there is something, then you can keep walking. And this is like a
if you have the experience of it. And that's what these basic techniques are for. They give you experience. Like the Vedic culture is not a culture of faith, it's a culture of experience. You don't just, I hope there's something there. No, you actually, here's a way you can actually experience it.
But to experience it, you need to believe that it exists, you know what I mean? Because otherwise, why would you even do that? So the fact that we are giving these, for example, we're giving your experience to people through this podcast is a way of telling them there is something else and you can experience it.
There.
Exactly.
And it's big.
You had said it was gonna turn like this. Like
it's huge.
That's what she said. And so like this is beautiful, and it's incredible that we are giving people this opportunity to really access something different, to know that there is something else. And I now I don't eat meat anymore, I don't eat meat, fish anymore, but like I had this experience at some point in which I was already, that's when I stopped eating fish, when I started becoming very sensitive to the spirit of the animal, because everything in the universe is consistent. If I eat
such a tasty
Tom,
spirit, though.
If I eat Tom, I will perceive your thoughts, because you are consistent with your thoughts and you produce molecules that go in your bones, in your muscles. Every one of us is consistent with what we feel, with our feelings. And so at some point for a couple of times, I ate canned tuna, which I loved. And I realized that every time I would eat canned tuna, which is a fish which lives in the ocean, in the sense of like, it lives in the ocean, not on earth. So it's an animal that has never evolved to the land, has stayed in the ocean. Every time I will eat it, I will have embodied this feeling of lack of faith, like there's nothing outside of the water, which is reason why fish has never gone out of the water. Like the fishes that never evolved, they don't believe there's anything after, like beyond that. So they're like, what am I even doing? Like, of course I'm gonna stay here, there's nothing else. So I started getting these feelings by eating different animals, like different fish and different meat. And I did not get the same feeling with salmon. And salmon is in fact a fish that travels a lot and goes to the rivers to make it eggs. And so tuna itself is an animal that doesn't have faith in something else, So because of that, it never starts adventuring outside of the water. And instead, to adventure outside, you need to have this curiosity. And for those who don't have that curiosity, which is the curiosity you have, usually it's either curiosity that drives people, or pain, or discomfort, or disgust. As you said, like you're like, I was done with America, I was done with rock, and so I adventured. Or I was curious, and so I adventured. Or I felt small, and so that makes me feel like there was something bigger outside to explore. So all of these feelings we have at the very beginning, that's the beginning of us exploring the transcendental, because it starts by exploring different kinds of music, but it ends with it's always the same choice
to try
that you
something and long enough so that you do feel something. It's a
I'm curious to know the next step.
Road,
I'm curious to know the next step after transcendental meditation that you're right now on, because maybe there is something else, maybe there is a next step to that. And so I love that you're giving to people all the different milestones that they kind of like, that determine the fact that you are on a spiritual journey, that you are on the journey that you're supposed to be on, because we all are on it. We just don't want to be like tuna that doesn't believe there's anything else, and so because of that it never adventures out of the water. you want to keep walking. We are meant to keep walking. We are here today, humans, because we had the curiosity through our whole evolution. We are the ones that had the curiosity or the need or whatever reasons to keep walking outside of our cocoon, outside of our shell, outside of our comfort zone, and keep exploring. And in fact, we're going to Mars, right? And so all of it is just part of us, our human.
I don't know. You can go to Mars. I'm not.
What?
I like it here. I don't want to go to Mars.
You don't have faith, are you, Tuna? Like, no, just kidding. I agree with that. I also want to be here. I'm a earthy. Yeah. I'm a terrestrial person. I love it here.
There's plenty going on here.
I'm good. I agree.
But we'll see.
But you see, I also come from Calabria, from the south of Italy, and then I went to Rome, and then from Rome I came here. So it's the same. We're all on the same journey of exploring because we believe there must be something else. The work cannot just be all here, and what guides us is pain or discomfort or curiosity or whatever feeling that gives us this spark to go out of our comfort zone. So that
it feels like it's not an external travel, but an internal travel at this point.
Yes,
I
and it
think
is.
That's really the frontier that I'm in now.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And then there will be external travel because it's led by a deeper internal travel.
Absolutely, it's all led by our internal. Well, if you align, then you keep traveling. But like, absolutely, and like, same thing for me as well. Like, ultimately, I'm going back to the origin. Like, I'm starting to like plant my own, like pot my own plants, and I'm growing mushrooms, and I'm doing all of these things. I grew up in the lands. Like, I grew up in a farm, so I'm really going back, and I feel this. I had to. It's really like the circle is coming back, right? Regardless of where I am, regardless of where I'm in my life, in my journey, the whole circle like happens regardless of that. Like this inner journey that I'm going back to the same things that I used to do as a child, that I loved as a child, as an inner journey, but now I'm understanding them in a more deeper way. And so it's all the first circle that goes back, and goes back ultimately, as you're saying, to your inner journey that you have forgot for a long time, to go through this egoic journey in society, and after adventuring and doing things, you're like, this doesn't make any sense, and you go back and you're like, you know what, I like the earth, I don't need to go to Mars. I like it here. So I love this. So this has been pretty a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for coming over as well, because we give our audience something different. And thank you guys for listening, and please find Tom. I'm gonna put all the links to all of his music and his website, tomrossimusic.com, right?
Yep.
And please listen to his music. He has also a lot of beautiful ambient music that I love, and I listen to it all the time. And he uses specific frequencies that are great for you, for your psyche, for your spirit, and for your soul. And thank you, Tom, again for being here. And you can find my links as well in all the description of this episode. And please turn on the bell and the notification, and let us know what you think. And contact me or him, and I'm gonna put also his Instagram, and let us know what you think, and comment and interact. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.